Kenyans are facing spiraling living costs caused by measures to tame surging public debt. President William Ruto's government took power in September 2022 after a decade of debt-fueled infrastructure spending that pushed public debt levels up to nearly 70% of GDP from just over 40% a decade earlier. For some analysts on the Ruto administration's performance, the managing editor of English to Africa TV, Vincent Makori, spoke with Irungu Houghton, the executive director for Amnesty International Kenya.
For the elections, we released a scorecard with 4 other organizations on the Jubilee Administration. This was the outgoing administration of President Uhuru Kenyatta. And, I think simply we gave them a D-, I think, in terms of their score. And the concerns were, although there had been a lot of progress on the issue of health rights, there had been really very little progress on a number of other civil liberty-related issues. I think a year and a half in to the Kenya Kwanza administration, a lot of the promises that were made during the electoral process from a human rights perspective are still underway, in the sense that they've not really seen massive breakthroughs. We have seen a lot of energy going into reforming the public health sector. The health insurance scheme has seen some very bold legal amendments, and we've seen energy around the right to housing. The concern, I think, for most Kenyans is that many of those proposals have tended to be very expensive in terms of taxation, so increased levies, increased taxes, and therefore they're unpopular in a way that is somewhat interesting, given that they're actually designed to raise the levels of housing, raise the levels of health. But I think the bigger issue really has always been the debt, I guess the weight of the debt that was incurred during the Jubilee administration. $7 and $10 that Kenyans pay in form of debts, in form of taxes, actually go to paying back the Chinese and the European Union primarily for loans that were incurred to build large infrastructural projects that it is arguable whether Kenya needed. So therefore, I think the Kenya Kwanza administration is still grappling with, if we can put it this way, the sins of their predecessors. And really, I think a sense of economic challenges that come with a global recession.
Yes, and in terms of perhaps the articulation of these issues, or perhaps communication, some feel like there's a discordance between what the administration had promised, even right way before, during the campaigns, and soon after, saying first we are in debt to our eyes, and also that we don't have money, we didn't find anything. But then some say the spending is a little bit too much. Not long ago, we had that the vice president's, the deputy president's office, I think, spent about 10 million Kenya shillings for curtains. And so people say, why this kind of contradictions? We have no money on one side, and then we are spending too much.
No, initial statements by the president, I think, within the first 6 months of coming to power, spoke about the need to cut back government expenditure. But there's been really no evidence that this has really happened as a conscious design to right-size government. I mean, we continue to hear, how much is spent on international travel, not just by the deputy president, but also by the president and several cabinet secretaries. I think there's only 1 or 2 cabinet secretaries who can claim that they have spent most of the last 18 months in the country focusing on their portfolios. And I think the concern has been really that at a time like this, when you're asking Kenyans to give up 30 to 35% of their income for government services that are difficult to see, then we should be requesting the government to also cut itself down to a point where it actually doesn't need so much money, or that the money that is available is actually going to services as opposed to being eaten up by the bureaucracy of the state.
The UN Environment Assembly, known as